Cricket's greatest tragedy is not what you think. A batting genius scored 258 in his final match, then disappeared forever, and the real reason will shock you. The date was March 15, 1969. Christchurch, New Zealand. A powerful man from Barbados walked to the crease knowing this might be his last chance. What happened next was pure magic. 258 runs, the highest score ever made by a cricketer in their final test match. But here's what nobody tells you about that day. As Seymour Nurse walked off that field after his masterpiece, he had no idea he would never play international cricket again. At just 35 years old, with a test average of nearly 48, he was about to disappear from the game forever. And the reason why is one of cricket's most heartbreaking untold stories. Let me take you back to November 10, 1933, when Seymour MacDonald Nurse was born in Barbados. This was a different world, where cricket wasn't just a game, but a way of life in the Caribbean. Every young boy dreamed of representing the West Indies, but most would never even come close. Seymour was different, though. From his early days, playing on the streets of Barbados, people could see he had something special. Which meant that while other players were establishing themselves in their early 20s, Seymour was still figuring out his game. In cricket, timing is everything, and Seymour's timing seemed all wrong from the start. Picture this scene from the 1950s. A young Seymour Nurse walking into the famous Empire Cricket Club in Barbados, nervous but determined. Imagine being mentored by one of cricket's all-time greats. Weeks saw something in young Seymour that others had missed. He taught him how to read bowlers, how to time his shots, how to build an innings, but most importantly, he taught him patience, something Seymour would need more than anyone could have imagined. His breakthrough moment came in a way that sounds like something from a movie. After only 4 first-class games, he turned out for Barbados to make 213 against the visiting MCC former West Indies pacer. Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. Think about that for a moment. Here was a player with barely any experience at the top level, facing one of the best cricket teams in the world, and he scored over 200 runs. People started talking about this powerful new batsman from Barbados, who could hit the ball harder than anyone they had ever seen. But cricket in the 1960s wasn't like cricket today. There weren't as many international matches, and getting selected for the West Indies was incredibly difficult. The Caribbean islands had so many talented players that even scoring double centuries didn't guarantee selection. Seymour had to wait and wait and wait some more. When his chance finally came in 1960, he made his test debut against England. Ezra Mosley, former West Indies and Glamorgan bowler, dies aged 63. Cricket News, Sky Sports at the age of 26, already considered old for a debut in those days. Most cricketers today make their international debuts in their early 20s. But Seymour was different. He was patient, determined, and hungry to prove that his wait had been worth it. What made Seymour special wasn't just his powerful hitting, it was his style. A powerfully built right-hand batsman and an aggressive, if somewhat impetuous shotmaker, he played cricket like he was painting a masterpiece. Every shot was deliberate, every boundary was earned through pure timing and power. The way he'd lean back to cut the ball and end up standing by the square leg umpire, former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident became his signature move, something that young cricketers across Barbados would try to copy. Imagine being forced to play in a position that didn't suit your natural game. Opening the batting in Test cricket is one of the hardest jobs in sport. You face the fastest bowlers when the ball is new and moving around, when the pitch is at its most dangerous. Middle-order batsmen like Seymour are used to coming in when the ball is older and the bowlers are tired. But the West Indies team management kept asking him to open over and over again. This wasn't just about tactics, it was about politics and team dynamics. The West Indies had many talented middle-order batsmen in the 1960s, but they were short of good openers. So they took their most powerful middle-order player and asked him to sacrifice his natural game for the team. Seymour, being the team player he was, agreed. But every time he walked out to open the batting, he was playing against his natural instincts. Despite this challenge, Seymour's career started to bloom. He was a Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1967, one of the highest honors a cricketer can receive. This award isn't given lightly. It goes to players who have had exceptional years and are recognized as being among the very best in the world. For a player who had started his international career so late, this was validation that all those years of waiting had been worth it. The numbers tell part of Seymour's story. He scored 2,523 runs in 29 tests at an average of 47.60. Ezra Mosley, former West Indies and Glamorgan bowler, dies aged 63. Cricket News, Sky Sports. In today's cricket world, that average would make you one of the top batsmen in the world. He finished his career with 6 Test hundreds, 2 of them double tons. Former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. But what the numbers don't tell you is how much more he could have achieved if circumstances had been different. Had Seymour MacDonald Nurse been born, say, 50 years later, he would probably have played 100 tests for West Indies. Ezra Mosley, former West Indies and Glamorgan bowler, dies aged 63. Cricket News, Sky Sports. Think about that statement for a moment. Cricket experts believe that if Seymour had been born in the 1980s instead of the 1930s, he would have had a completely different career. He would have played in an era with more international cricket, better training facilities, more opportunities to develop his game, and most importantly, more time to establish himself. But Seymour was born into the wrong era for his type of talent. The 1960s West Indies team was packed with legendary players. You had guys like Gary Sobers, one of cricket's greatest all-rounders. You had the 3 W's, Worrell, Weeks, and Walcott, who were already established legends. You had Rohan Kanhai, another batting genius. Getting into this team and staying there was like trying to get into an exclusive club where everyone was already a superstar. The competition was so fierce that even a player of Seymour's caliber had to fight for every opportunity. He remains obscured in the company of giants. Cricketing legend Ezra Mosley killed in Barbados road accident, Saddleworth Independent. This phrase captures the tragedy of Seymour's career perfectly. He was a giant himself, but he was playing alongside other giants who were even bigger. In any other era, he would have been the star. In the 1960s, he was just another very good player in an extraordinary team. But the real tragedy was still to come. As the 1960s progressed, cricket was changing. The game was becoming more professional, more organized, more systematic. Younger players were coming through the system with better coaching and more opportunities. The selectors started looking for players who could fit specific roles, rather than just picking the best available talent. Seymour was caught in this transition. He was from the old school of cricket, where natural talent and experience mattered more than fitting into a system. But the new cricket world wanted specialists, players who could do specific jobs perfectly, rather than players who were simply great cricketers. As someone who was neither a natural opener nor a typical middle-order player, Seymour found himself in cricketing no man's land. The personal cost of his cricket career was also taking its toll. When Seymour Nurse set out from Barbados to begin the 1966 tour of England, he said goodbye to identical twin daughters. 3 months old, Gomes has no regrets over blanking 1983 Rebel Tour. Imagine leaving your 3-month-old twin daughters to go on a cricket tour that would last several months. In those days, cricket tours were much longer than they are today, and communication with home was difficult and expensive. Players would go months without seeing their families, missing precious moments that they could never get back. This sacrifice was common for cricketers of that era, but it was particularly hard for someone like Seymour, who had started his international career relatively late. He was already in his 30s, an age when most players are thinking about settling down and spending time with their families. But cricket was demanding more and more of his time, and the rewards weren't always guaranteed. Then came 1969, and that fateful tour of New Zealand. Seymour was 35 years old, which in cricket terms made him a veteran. He knew that his time in international cricket was probably coming to an end, but he wanted to go out on his own terms. The first test in Auckland showed that he still had plenty to offer. In the first test in Auckland, he made 95 and 168. Former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. A score of 95 is heartbreaking for any batsman, just 5 runs short of a century. But the 168 in the second innings showed that Seymour was still capable of match-winning performances. The final test in Christchurch was set up to be Seymour's whole farewell. He knew it, the team knew it, and probably the cricket world knew it too. When he walked out to bat, he was determined to leave a lasting impression. What followed was one of the greatest innings in cricket history. He bowed out of international cricket with a double hundred in his final test against New Zealand in Christchurch. In fact, that 258 was the best in a spectacular 3-match series for him, 258 against New Zealand at Christchurch in 1969. The highest score by a cricketer in his final test innings, Ezra Mosley, former West Indies and Glamorgan bowler, dies, aged 63. Cricket News, Sky Sports. Let that sink in for a moment. Nobody in the history of cricket has ever scored more runs in their final test match. It was the perfect farewell, the kind of ending that Hollywood screenwriters dream of. A veteran player, knowing his time is up, producing the performance of his lifetime in his final appearance. But here's where the story becomes truly heartbreaking. Nurse's Test cricket career came to what many consider a premature end in 1969. He was only 35 years old, still scoring runs at the highest level, still capable of match-winning performances. In today's cricket, players regularly play into their late 30s and even early 40s. Seymour had probably 5 more years of top-level cricket left in him. So why did his career end so abruptly? The truth is complicated and involves several factors that came together at exactly the wrong time for Seymour. First, West Indies cricket was going through a generational change. The team that had dominated world cricket in the 1960s was aging, and the selectors were looking to build a new team for the 1970s. Younger players were being given opportunities, and older players were being gradually phased out. Second, Seymour's position in the team had always been somewhat uncertain. Because he had been moved around the batting order so much during his career, he didn't have a clearly defined role. When selectors were looking to cut players, those without clear roles were the first to go. If Seymour had been a specialist opener or a specialist middle-order batsman, he might have held on to his place longer. Third, the politics of West Indies cricket were changing. Different islands were demanding more representation in the team, and selectors were under pressure to pick players from various Caribbean nations. Seymour, despite his obvious talent, found himself caught up in these political considerations. But perhaps most importantly, cricket was becoming more of a young man's game. The physical demands were increasing, the travel was becoming more intense, and the competition was getting fiercer. Selectors started to believe that it was better to invest in younger players who could serve the team for longer, rather than continue with older players who might only have a few years left. The tragedy is that Seymour was probably still the best batsman available for his position. His final test average of 47.60 was better than most of the players who replaced him. His experience was invaluable, and his ability to perform under pressure had been proven time and again. But cricket, like many sports, can be ruthless when it comes to aging players. What makes Seymour's story even more tragic is what happened after his international career ended. He finished his career with 6 Test hundreds, 2 of them double tons, and 9,489 runs in List A cricket at 43.93. He turned to coaching after his playing career. Former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. He remained involved in cricket, sharing his knowledge and experience with younger players. Later served as a Barbados selector and coach. But think about what could have been. Had Nurse been born, say, 50 years later, he would probably have played 100 tests South African rebel tours. Wikipedia. In the modern era, with more international cricket being played and careers lasting longer, Seymour would have been a superstar. He would have played in multiple World Cups, toured every cricket-playing nation multiple times, and probably scored over 5,000 test runs. The impact of his premature retirement went beyond just personal disappointment. Desmond Haynes, the former West Indies cricketer, considered Nurse a hero and mentor, former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. Young cricketers across the Caribbean looked up to Seymour as a role model. My coach, my mentor, we all from the Holders Hill area love this man. We used to walk like Seymour, bat like him, and try to talk like him. Thanks for everything you have done for me, he wrote in a Facebook post. Paying tribute, former West Indies pacer Ezra Mosley dies aged 63 in road accident. Imagine how many more young cricketers could have been inspired if Seymour had continued playing for another 5 years. How many batting techniques could he have perfected and passed on? How many matches could the West Indies have won with his experience in the middle order? The years after his retirement were difficult for Seymour in ways that the public never fully understood. He had given his best years to cricket, sacrificing time with his family, missing important personal milestones, and dedicating himself completely to representing the West Indies. In return, he was discarded at an age when he still had plenty to offer. But Seymour's character showed through in how he handled this disappointment. He didn't become bitter or resentful. Instead, he threw himself into coaching and developing the next generation of Caribbean cricketers. He understood that his role had changed from player to mentor, and he embraced it completely. He remains an avid supporter of the game, and it is always great to see him sitting, watching, and analyzing the game at Kensington Oval cricketing legend Ezra Mosley killed in Barbados road accident, Saddleworth Independent. Even decades after his playing career ended, Seymour remained connected to cricket. He would attend matches at his home ground in Barbados, watching carefully, analyzing the game, and probably thinking about how things could be done better. The key final chapter of Seymour's story is perhaps the most heartbreaking of all. Former West Indies batsman Seymour Nurse has died at the age of 85 after a long illness. Ezra Mosley dead aged 63. Rebel West Indies cricket star killed in road accident while cycling in native Barbados. The U.S. Sun +2. Nurse breathed his last on the 6th of May 2019 after a course of protracted illness. He was 85. The phrase long illness tells us that Seymour's final years were not easy. He suffered for an extended period before his death, a cruel end for someone who had given so much joy to cricket fans around the world. The funeral memorial was attended by, among others, Sir Garfield Sobers. When news of his death spread, cricket lovers around the world mourned not just the loss of a great player, but the loss of what could have been. We are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of West Indies batting legend Seymour Nurse on Monday in his native Barbados. The real tragedy of Seymour Nurse's story isn't just that his career ended prematurely, it's that he represents thousands of talented cricketers who were born into the wrong era, who faced circumstances beyond their control, and who never got the chance to fulfill their complete potential. His story is a reminder that talent alone isn't always enough, that timing matters, and that sometimes the greatest performances come too late to change the course of a career. But perhaps there's also something beautiful about how Seymour's career ended. Scoring 258 in your final test match is the kind of ending that most cricketers can only dream of. Going out at the absolute top of your game, proving that you still belonged at that level, leaving everyone wondering what might have been if you had continued. Maybe that's not such a bad way to be remembered after all. Hit that subscribe button to discover more untold stories of cricket legends who deserved so much more.